Welcome to this presentation about MAP at ACS. The goals for this presentation are to explain why we use MAP assessments, how we use MAP data at ACS, and finally to help you better understand what your child's report tells you about your child as a learner. To begin, I'd like to place MAP in context of all of the assessments that we do at ACS. We consider assessments kind of as constellations of data points, and altogether, all of these different data points help us paint a picture of individual students. MAP is just one of those constellation of data points. In addition to MAP, we look at formal assessments that teachers have created, assessments that are shared among teachers, informal assessments, including observations of students working. So when we consider MAP as one data point, it's used in several different ways at ACS. The first is by classroom teachers, and classroom teachers will use MAP along with other assessments to identify strengths and next steps of individual students. They use MAP to measure growth over time for individual students as well as their entire class. And finally, MAP is used for instructional implications, such as what do I teach next, where might students have holes or gaps, and really anything related to ensuring that the what that teachers are teaching is what students need. At grade levels where teachers are either sharing content or they're sharing students, we will use MAP as, again, for instructional implications to support individuals and groups at a grade level. One example of that is in the elementary school. Teachers will use MAP data in concert with other data points to decide on which kinds of WIN groups we should have and which students might most benefit from each of those WIN groups. And then finally, we use MAP from a sectional and school-wide perspective, and we use that data from MAP along with other pieces of data to measure growth over time for individuals, for full grade levels, and for us as a school. And we also look at trends in the data. An example of looking at trends in the data is we noticed over time that our math scores were not as strong as we hoped, and we weren't showing the amount of growth that we had hoped to show. So we dug a little bit more into our students as mathematicians and recognized that we really needed to consider adopting a new math program. So we went through an arduous process, found a new math program that we felt would better meet our needs. And after that adoption, we noticed the trends in our students' math data going up. So why have we selected MAP as our standardized assessment? The first reason is that MAP aligns to our learning targets. So MAP is very much aligned to the Common Core standards, which are the standards that we use for reading, language usage, and math at ACS from kindergarten all the way up through grade 12. Additionally, we really like MAP because MAP focuses on growth. Our students take the assessment in the fall and again in the spring, and we can see how much growth students have made within that 1 year. And that's very, very helpful information for us. Also, it helps students to see how they have grown over time. So we really appreciate the focus that MAP has on growth. And finally, MAP is adaptive, and what that means is that the assessment will give students items or questions outside of their grade level band, and the assessment adapts to how students are doing live while they're taking the assessment. So we really get good information about students as learners that we can't get from other standardized assessments. Also, MAP gives us data that compares individual students and our school to U.S. national norms, and that norm study is based on thousands and thousands and thousands of students in the U.S. We also get international norms from MAP that help us see how we're doing compared to schools that are more like our schools than maybe schools that would be in the United States. The one caveat to the international norms is that the sample size for that norm study is significantly smaller than the sample size for the national norm study, so the standard error in the international norms is higher than it is in the national norms. So I've talked a little bit about what the data tells us and how we use it, but there are some things that the data that we get from MAP cannot tell us. And the first thing it cannot tell us is a grade level equivalence for any one student. With some standardized assessments, you'll get in the reports, you'll see that it says that your child's working at 6th grade 4th month level, for example. And the MAP assessment does not tell us where a child is working within grade level curriculum. The other thing that it does not tell us is the attainment of standards at a grade level curriculum. Because the assessment is pulling information for students from any grade level, it doesn't get deep enough to say how students are doing on specific standards in the grade level that they're currently in. But that's okay for us because we have assessments that are very much aligned to the grade level standards that we use in classes, and teachers can tell if students are meeting their grade level standards based on the assessments they use on a regular basis. And finally, and I think most importantly, MAP doesn't tell us how students are doing in class on a day-to-day basis. The MAP assessment is a one-time event. It takes students between 45 minutes and on average about an hour. And so that doesn't tell us how kids are doing in class. It doesn't, students can be just having a really bad day because they had an argument with a friend in the morning or they're not feeling well. And so if you want to know how students are doing in class, please don't rely on the MAP test. Go straight to the source and talk to your students' classroom teachers. So I mentioned earlier that one thing we really appreciate about the MAP assessment is the adaptive nature of the assessment. And this graphic will help you to understand the adaptive nature. So when a student first takes the assessment, they will be given an item or a question that is about where the assessment thinks that they should start based on their age, or if this is the second time they've taken MAP at ACS, based on their previous score. And so it will give them an item, and the students will answer that item. If they get the item correct, the next question is going to be significantly more difficult. If they get that, in this case, the item was incorrect, so the test then gave the student a question that was easier, but not as easy as the first question. They got this one correct, so it got a little more difficult. They got this one correct, it got a little more difficult, and then they got this item wrong. It went a little bit easier, and so on and so forth. And the test continues to give the students questions until they are getting the questions correct 50% of the time and incorrect 50% of the time. And this is how the test determines what the student's raw score is, or the RIT score. And so this adaptive nature allows for students to be seeing questions that are outside of their grade level band. It also means that every student has a unique experience whenever they take the assessment. So this brings us to the scores and what those look like for you on your child's report. So your child's report is available right now in PowerSchool. And when you open it, you are going to see a history of all of the times that your child has taken the assessment. In this case, this is a student who took the assessment in fall, and their score was a 212, this RIT score. And the average RIT score, the norm grade level mean, is 209. Please keep in mind this norm is from the U.S. National Norm Standards. This is not from our school's norm. And so your child is, in this case, is not being compared to their peers at ACS or their peers in international schools. They're being compared to their peers in all of the United States. You'll also see a projection, which is this score here, and this is the score that we would expect a child to see if they were to take the test again in the spring. And so this projection is based on the average growth that a student of your child's age at this specific RIT score had within one school year. Also at the bottom, you're going to see goal performance. And so each of the tests is broken up into specific goals, and these goals come directly from our standards. And so you'll see each of the goals, and you'll also see designation here of the students, how well they did compared to the norms. So in operations and algebraic thinking, this child was average, whereas in measurement and data, this child was on a high average. And then in numbers and operations, the child is a low average. Where this might be helpful information for you as a family is to think about where we might need to put a little more focus for this child in their academics. So I would say this child needs to spend a little more time thinking about numbers and operations than they need to about measurement and data. Over on the other side of the report, we have a comparison to, you can see this data here. Here's a 203, and here it is again, a 203. But what you're going to see on this side that you're not seeing over on the other side is the percentile range. And so what the percentile is this shows if there were 100 students of your child's age that also took this assessment, in this case, when the child was in second grade, they would have done better than 87 children, and there would have been 12 children that did better than your child. And so the percentile range gives you a sense of how your child is doing compared to age-level peers in the United States. The other thing that you're going to see is the growth that your child had, and this won't come up for this one. You'll see this for spring only because we measure growth from fall to spring. And so you may see these numbers here from previous assessments. This is the actual growth that the child made, and this was the projection of what was expected. And so in spring of 2019, this child, for this assessment, grew less than was expected. Now you're going to note on this that we don't have spring scores. I'd also like you to pay attention to the time here. This was during COVID. And so since 2021, students have been taking this assessment here at ACS in fall and spring. And so for your child's report, you will see growth projections for spring assessments. All right, so this is your child's report in the fall. And I'd like to share a couple of things that you can do at home to support your child. MAP has connections with two organizations. One is Khan Academy and the other is Lexile. And here are the URLs that you can use if you're interested in those. This is an example of what it looks like in Khan Academy. So if you go to khanacademy.org math/mappers, what you can do is put your child's RIT score in here. And you'll see that on the assessment, and it will then give you it will give your child some practice through Khan Academy that is at your child's where they are on the MAP assessment. So this is really targeted practice that students can do that is very specific to their scores on the MAP. The other thing that you can look at is Lexile. So in the reading score, the reading portion of your child's report, you will see a Lexile number. And what that number is students are given Lexile numbers, and books also have Lexile numbers. So you can use that number to help find books that are interesting and at the right reading level for your child. And so if you go to lexile.com, find a book, then you can put in here your student's measure, or you can put in a range, and then you can search by grade. Also, as you go further in, you can help students, you can target this to the kinds of books that students are interested in, and then this can help you to identify some just right books for your student to read. Teachers can also help you with that. We do extensive reading assessments, and the information that a teacher can give you about a just right book for your child is probably more accurate than the Lexile. Nevertheless, this is something that you may find helpful. Okay, finally, I'd like to share with you how you can access your child's MAP report in PowerSchool. And if you go to PowerSchool, on the left-hand navigation side, you'll see that there is an area that you can click for MAP scores. If you click there, then we'll find your fall results. It's not going to be under 2018-2019. It'll be for 2025-26. If you click there, then you should be able to see your child's MAP results. If you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out to your building, your sectional principal, and they can help you to better understand your child's MAP reports and also help place those reports in context. Thank you so much for your time, and we are here to support if you need it.